Hello folks, it's the Pace Chaser again. Welcome to another one of my videos. This is another one of the model reviews that I do from time to time, where I look at some of the older models that are available on the second-hand market. And today we've got something a little bit different. Normally I review models from my collection, indeed I'm doing that in the case of this one. But the rest of my collection is 1/76 scale 00. And all the model reviews I've done so far have been of 00 1/76 scale models. However, in among them all is one 1/50th scale Bedford OB, and that's what I'm going to review today. Produced by Corgi, starting in the 1980s, this particular release was done in the early 1990s. So what I'll do is I'll quickly explain why I've got this in my collection, then we'll talk about the impact this model had on models generally, and model collecting generally, and I'll have a look around the bus as I normally do, see what sort of quality it is, and then we'll talk about the price if you want to add a Corgi Bedford OB to your collection. So first of all, why have I got a 1/50th scale model in among a collection of 1/76 scale ones? Well, the reason is it's done in the livery of a Grimsby company, and I'm currently based in Grimsby, as my regular viewers will know, and this is in the livery of Granville Tours, who were based on Granville Street in Grimsby, just around the corner from where I live now. I did a video where I went to the former depot site, which is now more or less derelict, and I talked about the history of the company. They were quite interesting. They ran trucks as well as buses and coaches for a period of time. They had an offshoot in Great Yarmouth. They did various contract services for Scunthorpe Steelworks and things like that. So I went through a bit of that. I'll put the link to that video in the description to this one if you'd like to know more about Granville Tours. But that's why I've got it, because it's a rare commercially produced model of a Grimsby area vehicle. And that's why I've got one 1/50th scale model in among my collection. So the impact this had on model collecting generally, well, going back to the 1980s, basically if you wanted a fleet of buses, either your own fictional fleet or you wanted to model your local company, you had a choice of two. You could either repaint toys produced by Dinky Toys, Matchbox and Corgi, or you could build white metal kits. Now neither of them gave a particularly convincing end product. The repainted toys looked like repainted toys. The white metal kits were varying quality. A lot of them you needed a PhD in engineering to put them together, and then when you finished they didn't look particularly convincing. They didn't always look, totally like the bus they were supposed to be representing. So it wasn't ideal. Now Corgi at this point in the 80s were just a toy maker, but they decided towards the end of the 1980s, they were going to experiment with the adult model collector market. And what they did first of all was they got their Routemaster toy, which was basically 1/64th scale, and did a version of it with an AEC radiator rather than the Routemaster style one, with the generic AEC radiator from the Regent, that kind of thing. It wasn't particularly convincing as a model, but they did it in various releases. They put them in realistic liveries, and they sell quite well. So what they did after that was they did a 1/50th scale Bedford OB, aimed at adult collectors rather than kids. Now the first ones were just marketed as under the Corgi name. They weren't in the later Corgi Classics series. They were just marketed under the name Corgi. They came in an upscaled version of the box that the Corgi toys came in, so it was basically a cardboard box, but with a large cellophane viewing window at the front and top so you could see what you were buying, and held onto a cardboard base by some plastic clips. So it was an upscaled version of the toy boxes basically. The first ones came with like moulded plastic disc wheels that weren't detailed. They looked fairly horrendous, to be honest, but the bodywork was the same as on this. As I said, this was done in the early 90s, this particular release, by which point it started to do more detailed wheels. But the early ones just had like a plain disc wheel that was solid plastic. The tyre was moulded in the same plastic as the wheel. Basically it was all one piece. Now the Bedford OB sold really well. It proved there was a market for adult collectors of models, not just kids wanting to push them about on the carpet. And it went on to sell, I think there were 64 variations of it done all in all. Some of them were available in sets with various other vehicles, and most of them were just individual releases, but I think it's 64 is the final total of variations that were produced of this Bedford OB, up till about 1999 when it went out of production. But it did show to Corgi and anybody else who was interested that there was a market for adult collectors of models, and it paved the way for the later Corgi Classics 150th scale range, and then the 176th scale ranges from Corgi, from EFE and from all the other people. It proved there was a market among adults to buy models of buses. So in a sense it was a trailblazer. It really sort of paved the way for the later die-cast model market. So we'll have a look around the model, starting with the front. This is various people built bodywork on Bedford OBs. The most common and the most well known was the Duple Vista body, which is what Corgi have modelled. There were far more of these produced than any other type of Bedford OB as far as I'm aware, and this is the kind of iconic look, the iconic bodywork that everybody thinks of when they think of Bedford OBs. So we start at the front. The front dome is a pretty good shape. It looks reasonably like it should do. You've got the sort of well-known shape of a destination blind there arching up. Maybe not quite accurate. It looks a little bit too angled in the middle, but that might be just me. The windscreen looks reasonable. It's set kind of V shape as it should be. And then you come down to the bonnet, that's a fairly reasonable shape, as are the wheel arches. The headlights look a little bit toy-like. Again, at the time this model was first produced in the late 80s, Corgi were a toy maker. It was very much an experiment into doing a model, so it does betray the toy origins of the firm a little bit. And that goes into the registration plate mounting as well, and the way the registration plate's done there. See the registration BEE 100. It's a curious model in that if you look at the individual bits, they're all the right shape, but when you look at it all as a whole, it somehow doesn't quite capture the look of the actual vehicle. If you look at the 4mm scale, the 176 scale models, they're a lot more sleek. The Duple Vista body was sleek and it was quite diminutive as well. They were quite small vehicles, but somehow the sleekness of it isn't quite captured on this. I think possibly the front, it's roughly the right shape, but it might be a little bit too upright. I can't really put my finger on why it doesn't quite look like the real vehicle, but somehow it doesn't. It's a good try, but it just, as I say, it doesn't have the sleekness of the real thing or the later 176 models, and it looks a little bit chunky as well. It doesn't quite capture the small look of the prototype really, but it's not a bad try. We'll go around again to the near side. The wheel arches there looking pretty decent. The curve of the front where it goes into the bonnet, again, really well done. Sliding door modelled, and it's recessed that it would slide into, and the shape of the windows is about right. The beading there curving down as well, and the well-known sort of beading and moulding around the rear wheel there, that sort of streamlined effect, well captured. As I said, this is one of the slightly later releases with detailed wheels. By the time this was done in the early 90s, they'd started producing the range of 150th Corgi Classics, which had proper plastic moulded wheels that were detailed and rubber tyres. So they put those wheels and tyres onto the Bedford OB. They sort of retrospectively fitted them to it, if you like. So this one has the more detailed wheels, which look really good, and the proper rubber tyres as well. Very nice. The detailing perhaps a little bit basic. Granville Tours weren't an operator that put the name all over everything anyway. It does say Granville Tours Pullman Deluxe at the top there, and you've got the little logo there. There is no legal lettering. There's no address, there's no unladen weight on there. So that's what I mean. The detailing was slightly basic. Got the fleet number 153 on the corner there as well. Go on to the back. Again, it looks quite good. The shape of it's about right. The characteristic split window with the divider down the middle there, and the panel underneath represented there, Granville Tours written in it. The indicators with the registration plate in between, as they would have been, and again the lettering on the back's quite nicely done. The lights are nice as well, and the characteristic moulded bumper. And if you can see the shape of it, it kind of tapers in and comes back out again a little bit, as the real thing did. So the shape of it is really well done there. Round to the off side, again, lettering the same as on the near side. You've got the fleet name on the top there and the crest and the fleet number. Nothing else, no fuel markings or anything like that. The roof quite plain. This 1/50th scale one didn't have the roof windows, as you can see. It just had solid cove panels. But the roof quite plain. There's a representation of that bit there. I think in real life that would slide back, or on some of them there would be a sliding roof in that bit. And then we go to the underside. There's a basic representation of the chassis detailing and the exhaust system there, as you can see. Looking at the inside, it is quite basic again. You can tell that Corgi were a toy maker. It kind of betrays the toy origins of the firm. It's not bad, don't get me wrong. It's not offensively bad at all, but it is quite basic. There is some attempt to make the seats moulded into the kind of shape that they would be in real life, and it's all finished in a kind of inoffensive cream colour. Not perhaps prototypical. The sides might have been cream, but probably more like wood coloured, and maybe browns would have been more realistic for the colouring of it, but it's not a bad attempt. As I say, all in all, it's a pretty decent model. It just somehow doesn't quite capture the look of the real thing. It doesn't have the sleekness, as I say. It looks a little bit chunky, but it's not a bad model by any means at all. And it's certainly worth getting one for your collection. If I mean, you won't struggle to find one that fits into your area of interest. Like I said, there are about 60 odd releases of them, 64 I think I counted all together. So you'll find one definitely that's in your area of interest. I'll just show you the box quickly. As I said, the early ones were in an upscaled version of the toy box, but by the time they produced this one in the early 90s, they'd started putting them in the Corgi Classics standard sort of box like this one. Lift the lid off and it just lifts off. So they've gone onto the model boxes rather than the toy boxes. So what will one of these set you back if you want to buy one? A Bedford OB, that is, not necessarily a Granville Tours one. Well, I've had a look on eBay for the purposes of the video. I'm doing this in June 2024, and the cheapest one I could find this morning was £4.50 plus £3.49 postage and packing, so £7.99 all in. The most expensive one I could find was £52 plus £4.45 postage and packing. That was the McBrain's version. The McBrain's one is quite collectible, but quite a few of the other ones are not. As I say, starting price of £7.99 including postage for a model this size. You know, for a 176 one you'd be struggling to get a model for that price. So the prices are generally quite cheap. There was a seller on eBay as well advertising a job lot of 12 of these unboxed for £48 plus £5.40 postage and packing, and that equates to £4.45 each, which is not bad at all, is it? You couldn't get, as I say, 176 models for that, and you're getting something that's about twice the size. So they are quite cheap. The Corgi 150s tend to be quite cheap. If you want one of the more collectible ones, they're not. As I say, some of them do go for more money, like the McBrain's one that I mentioned, but generally the prices are fairly low. They don't seem to be that collectible, the 150s. And it's a shame because they are nice models and they have a presence that smaller models don't really have. You know, they do have a very, as I say, presence that they're quite chunky and they do dominate the view like that. So yeah, they're well worth getting. And as I say, the prices tend to be cheaper than their 176 scale counterparts. So as always, thank you for joining me. Take care and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.